Hi, my name is Andrew Greenfield. I'm an IBM Global Storage Engineer, and today I'm going to take you on a tour of what's called Policy Based Replication, and that's what we also call as PBR-DR, or for disaster recovery, or asynchronous. So let's take you on a tour of not only the feature, but how we set it up. As you can see here on my system in the upper left, it says Tron lives. Let's call this Site A. So as you can see, I don't have a partnership yet. I need to set up that partnership. So I'm going to start that partnership right here on Site A. And now I can see Total Recall, or Site B. It's already exchanged the certificate. So I'm going to put in some values here. And as you can see on the left-hand side, I put in the values. I'm not going to change the background copy rate, but you can adjust this for whatever situations you have on production side. And remember, this is for disaster recovery. So this is going to be asynchronous. So you'll see how that affects later on our RPO. As you can see, it's reached out to Total Recall, or Site B, and I have a nice wizard on the right-hand side, and so let's follow along. So I'm just going to click on Total Recall, which is my Site B, do the same menu, same steps, again, two-site partnership, and you can see that it sees it. Of course, I've already zoned in on fiber channel, but you could put in IP, the same kind of situation. So we put in the 3000 and the 100 again. And now it's going to reach out from Total Recall, or Site B, all the way to Site A, Tron lives, which is literally just inches away. But you get the idea. And as you can see, they're figuring out the rest of their replication strategy. And I have a nice wizard on the right-hand side, which shows through the rest as soon as Site A, or Tron lives, goes to green, which you'll see in a few seconds. Total Recall can see Tron, and now Tron can see Total Recall. Great, so we're all set there. In other words, both sides see each other and have completely negotiated things. So let's actually go to the next step here. So we're going to link the pools. That's right, a pool on, in this case, System B to System A. So you'll see that, you'll say pools to link, from Total Recall, or Site B, to Tron on Site A. We can also do a provisioning policy if we want, but I just click on Apply. So there we go. We've linked the pools on both of the systems now, and now a replication policy. Now remember, this is for disaster recovery. So that means anything usually after 10 minutes for a recovery point period. So we say yes, that Tron is going to be our Site A, our production side, our primary side. So let's name this replication policy. And in this case, it's going to be for an Oracle server. So I'm just going to call it Oracle Async. But of course, for whatever application you'd want. Or if this is going to be a general purpose replication policy for a whole bunch of applications, for example, a gold tier or a platinum tier. So you can see two-site asynchronous from Tron to Total Recall A to B. And I've put that in. So now we have the policy. Great. Next step is then to create volume groups. You'll see that in the wizard over there. And populate them with volumes. And then they'll automatically be copied over. So let's create that volume group now. So as you can see, I'm going to call the volume group on Tron, Oracle VG for volume group. And now let's assign that new policy I just created there. And you can see the graphic from Tron to Total Recall, or A to B. Now I click on Assign. Great. So these are all setup tasks. And as you can see, okay, it's set up. I don't have any volumes, so that's why I can't start anything. Let's put some volumes into this volume group here. And so we click on Volume Properties. I'm going to actually put in a few volumes here. I'm going to name them appropriately, just 30. And we'll start off with 1 to 3 and thin provision just to save on some space. So you can see my 3 volumes are set. They're being created now inside this volume group. And what's really exciting is that once the setup is done, the policy is automatically going to take effect. So even though we haven't mapped these to a server yet, these volumes are going to start automatically replicating, even though there's nothing in them, to Total Recall. As you can see, it's at 0 seconds because there's nothing inside of them. But as soon as we map them to a host, we're all set for the replication. And as you notice, now that we have a volume group, any other volumes we add into this volume group will start replicating because the policy is already in place. So as you can see, we'll go back over to the other side here. And now let's go over to the volumes by pool so you can actually see it in a different way. So here's our volumes now on Total Recall. You can see that they all say offline because they are the DR copy, but we're all set. And now let's talk about snapshots. We can also do snapshots. This is using the internal snapshot policy. Of course, you can use external snapshot policies as well. We need to give it a date and a time. So we're going to start this off right now. And you can see that normally this will run every 6 hours. And you have the choice of a regular read-writable snapshot, or we can make it a safeguarded snapshot, which means it's completely immutable. You'll see the icon up there that here we on Tron, our A site, we are going to do safeguarded snapshots every 6 hours. Now, right now it hasn't taken anything, but manually we can take a snapshot, not a problem. Take a look. You can actually see that we've now created that snapshot using a manual GUI control. It's not safeguarded because it's not part of that policy, but it is something that we can then immediately create a clone from or a full copy of and then do something meaningful with that one. You can see that I have both those policies now assigned, the replication policy and the safeguarded snapshot policy. So that's fantastic. And as you can see, there it is over there every 6 hours. And here's what I mentioned earlier about the external safeguarded. We can use what's called Copy Services Manager or even another external scheduling application called Copy Data Manager. And there's some of our partners, such as Commvault, which can also be used to schedule snapshots, safeguarded or otherwise. That's why we have the feature and functionality. So let's talk about doing that other functionality here. If I actually go to my settings, which you'll actually see here, that I will go to the GUI side and I will actually turn on one feature so I can actually configure that. That's right. By displaying those extra configuration settings here, saving it, I will then be able to adjust the scheduler from an internal to external. In this case, Copy Services Manager. Notice external scheduling applications now shows up. I will copy and paste that URL. Here it is, Copy Services Manager. It's actually running in my lab. So I can just copy and paste just the URL. This is the first part is all it needs into the actual GUI. And by the way, here's the actual what CSM looks like. But let's put that back into our friend at Tron Libs or System A. By the way, if you've been following along. So as you can see, I've done this before. We love the browser. It keeps track of everything. So we save this. Great. Now watch what happens when I go back to my volume group and my pools. You're going to see that in just a second here. So I've got that internal safeguarded snapshot policy here, and you can see when it's about to run. But if I want to do something quicker, I can unassign this policy, or of course, I can create an internal policy that's a little faster. But to show the proof, watch, I'm assigning the safeguarded policy outside of the array using an outside scheduling application. So we'll navigate to that one. So it's going to start using this pool. Great. And so now what we will do is go over to our friend that you just saw, Copy Services Manager, and I want to make sure it's up to date. So I'm going to select the array. There it is, Tron Libs, refresh the configuration. So it says, hey, Tron, how's things going? What's your volumes? What's your volume groups? All the other fun stuff. Let me know. Now, normally it polls it, but for this demo, I want to do it a little faster. So again, we're going to take a snapshot now, but you can see CSM does lots of things for replication and a lot of other 3-site items, which is very useful. I'm going to grab that volume group now. So as you can see, I'm grabbing the volume group, a snapshot. I click OK. So that's great, fantastic. I'm going to look at it right now. So in a few seconds, you'll see the volume group session shows up here. It says, hey, I've got that volume group. I get it that you've already taken that snapshot, but it's not a safeguarded snapshot, but it's automatically talked to Tron. It knows what's going on. So watch what happens. Now let's take a safeguarded snapshot to my external CSM. So here we go. Boom. Notice the new name under snapshot name. Notice under safeguarded, it says yes. And now, not only from that, I can do the same thing. I can do a thin clone from that, another snapshot, or clone, a full clone from it. As well as if I have enough writes, I can delete that. Now remember, safeguarded snapshots, you can't delete. But I've taken a snapshot of all 3 of those volumes instantly. Safeguarded as well as a regular one. And you can also see the thin clone, which means, as you know, deltas. So it's actually using the original volumes, but only grabbing changes. And from example right now, let's clone the snapshot. So in other words, I'm actually taking a snapshot of a snapshot that's safeguarded in this case, and it's going to make a full clone of it, not a thin clone. And there you go, it's just finished. So I've now made a full clone of the safeguarded snapshot, so I can then do something meaningful with. There it is, volume group 0, or otherwise known as my full clone from the safeguarded snapshots. as you can see from the Tron pool and volume group 0, but you can rename that saying volume group that's been restored. And this is where you could then now map those volumes from the clone or the original to the host. And I'll just for giggles right now, you'll see the 1-0, 2-0, 3-0, etc. I'm going to map those. So in other words, I'm going to map the clone of the safeguarded snapshot to a host for immediate, for example, testing, test dev, and you can automatically script this as part of your test dev automation, all the other stuff like that. So there we have that. And now you can see on the properties, there we go, the mapped volumes, those SCSI IDs, and I'm going to show off the name here. See, it's not the original Oracle volumes. It's the safeguarded snap cloned snaps that are back mapped to ESX79. You can actually see all the volumes. Here we are. So you can see 1 and 1, 0, 2, 2, 0, exactly, all that stuff like that. Next. So we go back to volume groups. You can actually see that in VG0 doesn't have any snapshots. Remember, this is our restored one and doesn't have any policies. Of course, you could then start something new from this. You could actually assign a policy to this restored set of volumes. So back here, just to show off how meaningful it is to have a name instead of just VG-0, let's do something a little bit more meaningful here. So let's change this. So we'll just name it CSM Restoration. So that's been done. As you can see, we can still take a thin clone snapshot if we want to of this. We can do this all day if we wanted to. Just want to make sure you can see all the different options here. So in this case, you're taking a snap of a snap from somewhere else, and you'll see where this is going as soon as it completes. It's just completed. And that way, I want to show that CSM can keep track of clones that it's doing as well. So again, we've now made a clone from a snapshot of those volumes. So if you've been keeping score, we've actually gotten quite a few copies. And there's the VG0 again. We haven't renamed it, but that's the restore. And now let's just rename this so we actually have this. Now, if you've been keeping track, remember the other restore we did from CSM was a full. These are all thins. So the full means that if you read and write to that, it is not related back to the original ones. They are completely independent. So you can see how it's been keeping track. Instead of 1-0, now it's 1-1, 2-1, 3-1 example. You can rename these to anything you wanted to. In this case, I'm just going to make sure that everyone knows that these are the snaps of a snap that are all thin. Now, I bring up the flash copies because some people who might have been familiar with Virtualize for a while forgot that we also have these other features where you can do backups and other types of cloning functions inside the array, including targets of flash copies or snapshots and a lot of other things. So you can see how we can do a lot of different things with traditional snapshots or flash copy targets. And that's why I'm showing some of these screens here in case you want to go very advanced, which is far beyond normal snapshots. But I can show you the internal snapshots that it knows about, which is a little bit different than CSM. Remember, CSM has done a whole bunch of other stuff that while they're on the array, they're not internally to the array's native scheduler. So that's why you don't see as many snapshots that way, even though the snapshots are here. Now, I bring up the dependencies just because some people want to see how thins might be dependent upon others. In that case, it wasn't because it was from a clone, but you get the idea. Here's our dashboard again. Now let's go over to Total Recall or Site B, and as you'll see, there are the replicated volumes. Now let's just take a look at it for a second. You'll actually see that they still say offline. You can see the right capacity and everything else like that. We're back on Tron or Site A. And if you wanted to, we can assign a replication policy to this new volume group, and it will actually start replicating over to Total Recall. So even though we've made clones, it's all new set of volumes, and it's going to say, okay, sure, no problem. I'll send it on to Total Recall. That's why it's in red. And it's actually going to start here. And you can see that it's in process. There's nothing to change, so I can click on cancel to get out of this. It's just going to take a little bit here because I'm now going to copy all of these other changes to brand new volumes on Total Recall. And you'll get a nice progress bar too. So what we've done now is Tron, or Site A, is sending to Total Recall, or Site B, like I said, DR. We'll talk about high availability and total synchronous next in another video. But for right now, we're focusing on DR, so it's actually copying over all those blocks to Total Recall. And now you'll see, take a look, see how CSM Restore shows up on Total Recall or Site B? So just by one click of adding all those volumes in that volume group to a replication policy, they're now replicating just like that other group is, just by applying that replication policy. So very simple for the admins once you set up various policies of disaster recovery or high availability. And that way you can immediately know if you have a replication problem. And of course, it'll instantly take either those snapshots or those replications. So I'm going to speed up the video a little bit here because I don't think we need to wait for the copy to finish, even though there's not much data on them. So you'll see the progress indicator going a little bit faster than normal because we don't need to wait for that. And as you can see, we're all done. The recovery point is within policy now. Everything's been copied over to Total Recall. As you can see, we've got all the policies. We can also enable the access. So that's right, on our target system now, we can actually enable writes to the target system if we wanted to on both sides of those volume groups. In other words, on either of the volume groups on Total Recall or Site B, we can enable write access for test dev or anything else like that. So your production can still go on Site A. Meanwhile, we can do writes on Site B if you want to. And as you can see with the Tron pool, you can see all those different copies we've made. And I'm just going to arrange them a little differently here. You can see by volume group, makes a little bit more sense here. The 3 Oracle volumes in 3 different volume groups, which can then be applied in different ways. You'll see the original ones far down below, and then the 1.0, and then the 1.1 and 2.1s, etc. Thanks again for watching the video. I look forward to seeing you at an upcoming IBM event. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. Again, Andrew Greenfield at IBM, as your Global Storage Engineer. See you soon.